Hey guys, Tiffany Ofili Porter here, where I discuss all things life after sport. This video is going to be a little bit different than my typical. It's going to be a story time. And in this story time, I'm going to tell you guys about how two white women asked me to buy my son. And I know that sounds outrageous, and as much as I wish that were clickbait or misleading, it's not. I'm going to jump into the whole story time, kind of explain my thoughts and kind of how the whole thing transpired and how it resolved in the end. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So my son and I were at the Goodwill thrifting. I'm going to start a series, by the way, called Thrifted versus Styled, because I found some gems and I do think I have a gift of finding really good pieces in the thrift store. So I went there with my son today. That's no bearing on this story. So I was there. I was between the clothing section, the home goods section. I was just going throughout the whole store, finding some really good items. So as I was in the back of the store, kind of near the end of my shopping with my son, I had a very full cart. And my son saw this little toy train that he really liked, and it was huge, probably the same size as his body. So he insisted on it being in the front part of the cart. And as I was kind of just perusing the aisles, this older white woman comes up to me and she says, "Oh my goodness, he's gonna have so much fun with that." And I was like, ha ha ha, you know, just small talk, like, yes, he loves toys, or I can't even remember what my response was. And then she said, "Man, he is such a darling. Is he for sale? How much does he cost?" So then I was laughing from the previous comment that she made about him loving toys and about how cute he was. And then after she said that, I was like, wait a minute, that was weird. And then I had to fight my carnal reaction to check her in the moment. But I said, "Tiff, chill." So I just kept on walking. In fact, I walked off really quickly, and I'll get to why that matters in a second. Her friend comes, another older white woman, and says, "Oh my gosh, is he 50% off from the tags?" You know, because it was the yellow tags were 50% off. "Is he 50% off? Is he for sale? How much does he cost?" At this point, I'm not smiling. My face is very stoic, and I walk away because my blood starts to boil and I start to get upset. I start to get a little bit worked up, and I'm like, "Tiff, just relax." And then the first lady says to her friend, "Oh man, she stormed off so quickly. She didn't even tell me how much he costs or how much he's for sale for." By this point, I'm in a completely different section of the store. I can still hear them. That was the end of the conversation. So I'm perusing through the children girls section of clothing. And at this point, I'm like, yo, that crap was mad offensive. You're asking a black woman with a black baby, as an older white woman, "Can you buy my son?" I'm like, "Tiff, okay, how do we handle this?" Because I am a Christian and I do feel called to try to be as Christ-like as possible in my interactions with people. But at the same time, I'm a mother, I'm a black woman, and I have every right to kind of have those carnal responses. So I said, "You know what, Tiff? My first reaction was to go back and say, "Excuse me," that was, and just kind of school her. But at that point I was a little bit worked up. So I needed to kind of calm myself down. So I just kept on shopping, completely ignored it, even though I ain't gonna lie, it was in the back of my mind. But I'm like, you know what? Whatever. She can walk through her life saying offensive things that in her mind, I'm sure she didn't think was offensive. So then I go to the checkout aisle. And as we are checking out, the scanner or the cashier was not actually scanning. So she finished my whole haul. I had $120 worth of items, which was 3 or 4 big bags of stuff. She realized after all that it was not scanning. So she had to go and redo all of the scans. Now, the reason that matters is because in that time, several people kind of walked past me and, they went to go and check out their own thing. And then eventually, as she's doing the second set of scanning, these two old women come back again. And I'm like, "Tiff, you know what? They probably didn't think anything of it. They're not going to bring up the buying my child conversation again, and just leave it alone. Not a big deal. At this point, it had made maybe 15 minutes since the initial interaction. I had calmed down. I kind of just, gave it to the Lord and said, whatever. This woman comes to proceed and ask me, you still never told me how much it costs. How much is that baby? I'm ignoring her. And the second one chimes in again, and she goes, oh, ha, 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 that baby, just making small talk. At this point, I'm like, Tiff, what is the best way to approach this? Do I cuss these women out? And I would have every right to do so, because that's just mad weird. Like, even taking my blackness out of it, to ask somebody how much their baby costs, like, children are not a commodity. You can't buy children. I know in the past, some of you did but in 2024, you can't buy people. And then again, with child trafficking and all of that stuff, that's a different conversation for a different day, but you should not be able to buy children. So I'm like, I could cuss her out and I will be well within my rights and I would not feel bad about doing so. But I was like, Tiff, I'm literally having an internal dialogue with myself. Again, this is the situation that a lot of Black women have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Do we, approach you how we really want to approach you and then be labeled an angry Black woman? Or do we, take the bigger road and then leave home and maybe feel a little bit upset by us not standing up for ourselves? And again, I don't really necessarily know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I do kind of want to tell you what I did and the internal dialogue that I had within myself. So after we finished scanning, she's making more comments about how she's ancient. And when I tell you this woman was old, she probably was in her 70s. Like, she was an older woman, both of them. And they were just, cavalierly just talking and cracking jokes about how all her children are grown and blah, blah, blah. At this point, I'm tuning her out because honestly, I don't care about what you are saying right now, this small talk, because you offended me and I need to make it known. That's how I do it, how I was kind of thinking about the situation. Now, I didn't want to make a big scene about it, but you're gonna hear me today. One thing about me, you guys, I am not necessarily a very aggressive or confrontational person, but I sure as heck am not passive aggressive either. So I am very direct, and that was how I approached her. So after the girl was finished scanning all of my items, I looked to the woman. I said, you know what? It was incredibly offensive to ask me if my son is for sale. She was like, oh my God. I said, I don't necessarily think you meant anything by it. And that's the reason why I'm not being rude right now. But words matter. And it is very important for you to think about what you say. Okay, now I'm not raising my voice, but I'm also not smiling. The way that I'm saying it right now to the camera is exactly how I spoke to this woman. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean anything by it. And I'm like, and I told her, I reinforced, I said, to be honest, I don't necessarily think that you meant anything by it, even though I'll get to that in a different part of this conversation. However, again, it was offensive, and I do think it is important. I had to bring it up to you just so you are aware. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for your honesty. And I really appreciate you saying something. I'm so sorry. I did not mean anything by it. And I was just like, I took my receipt and I left. And that was the end of that portion of our conversation. I had no more interaction with her after that. So, couple things. Number one, I was proud of myself in that moment because a big part of me really did have to fight cussing this woman out. Like, you asking me if you can buy my baby as a Black woman in America after people that looked like you enslaved people that looked like me. And I know a lot of people want to erase that history, or they have the privilege to walk through life without acknowledging that reality. But people that look like me are still dealing with the ramifications of said actions all these years later. So there's a lot of historical context that's going on through my mind and through my lived experiences that caused me to kind of respond in that moment internally. So I'm like, Tiff, I genuinely do believe, most part of me, that she didn't mean anything by it. I think she was just trying to make conversation. I think she was just trying to be cheeky and cute. But you said it 3 times. You said it once, your friend said it twice, and then you came back and circled back on the conversation, showing that you had no regard about how this could potentially make the other woman feel. So I am proud that I spoke up in that moment. I am proud with the way that I addressed this woman because, like I said, I wasn't rude. I was very direct, though. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. Even the woman who was doing the ringing up, she was a little bit uncomfortable, but it's okay. It's okay to have uncomfortable conversations. And I am proud of just kind of in that moment deciding to be, I guess, somebody who's going to educate somebody with what I thought was with grace. Now, I do want to say, Black women, it sometimes feels like a heavy burden to carry, having to be the person to educate people, having to be the person to shoulder these types of conversations, or having to be the person to even have that in the back of your mind because of your lived experiences and how you have to maneuver through the world. However, in that moment, if I would have chosen to completely ignore it to protect my peace, I don't necessarily think that would have been a wrong move. Or if I decided to cuss her out and, let her know what was going on in my head and the reality of the situation, I don't necessarily think that would have been a wrong move either. Kind of depending on how you look at it, there are many ways to have approached that situation. Now, in all fairness to the woman, I mentioned that I don't necessarily think she meant anything by it. However, I don't know. There's a small cynical part of me that's like, am I being trolled right now? You coming up to me asking me if you can buy my baby. Your friend didn't necessarily even hear the first conversation of you saying that. She's asking me if you can buy my baby. You circled back and asked me if you could buy my baby. You don't think that's weird? Was that intentional? I don't know. That's between her and her God. If that were an intentional conversation for her to trigger me or to be offensive, then she's going to deal with her karma in the way that she deserves. But I am trying to be the bigger person in this way and give her the benefit of the doubt that I don't necessarily know if she meant to be offensive. But to be honest, that's problematic in and of itself. You don't necessarily have to be a Black woman to be able to respect Black women, okay? And I think that is a whole different conversation, whole different story for a different day. But sometimes just stepping outside of yourself and thinking, like, do my words hold weight? Because they do. Words genuinely matter, okay? I am in a profession as a pharmacist where I can't just tell you any old thing because my words and my actions have the weight to kill people. You know what I mean? The words really do matter. And, the Bible talks about the power of life and death within the tongue. And I kind of live my life by that. So I definitely did want to make sure that I was trying to be as Christ-like as possible in this instance. But at the same time, I don't want to say feel the responsibility, but I did want to educate this woman on why words matter. And hopefully the next time she interacts with another Black woman, she ain't gonna ask her if she can buy her baby. Now, I would love to know down in the comments what you guys think about this conversation. Do you think that woman meant anything malicious by her comments? Do you think that I responded appropriately? And if not, how would you have responded or not responded? Because not responding is also a response in a way. But I just would love to continue on this conversation down in the comments. I am very receptive and I respond to everybody in my comments. And one other thing I do want to mention is I'm all about inclusion. I'm all about love and trying to spread Christ's love and, be as accommodating as I can be to everybody. But that's not going to come at the expense of my comfort, of my dignity, of my humanity. I don't speak for all Black women. And I think that's a responsibility that a lot of Black people have to shoulder. And I don't speak for all Black women. So there might be a Black woman in the comments who might watch this video and be like, Tiff, you were tripping. I would not have seen it like that. And that's perfectly fine. Your lived experiences are your lived experiences. And the way that you perceive the world is yours. With that same token, though, I do think the fact that this woman is able to so cavalierly say something like that to a person, especially specifically a Black woman, shows the level of privilege that she has. You know, I don't ever think another Black woman would have asked me, how much is your baby for sale for? Because of our lived experiences and our social awareness of, you know, cues that are appropriate and inappropriate. So hopefully it was well received by this woman. I hope she learned something from it. I hope you at home watching this video, whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you agree with me or whether you don't agree with me, kind of have an idea of where I was coming from. And hopefully this can be a conversation starter for you in your life in some way. My son, during the whole conversation, was very he's a baby. He's 18 months. He doesn't even know what's going on. He's eating his cheese. And I wasn't loud. I didn't make a scene. I wasn't raising my voice. But if you were in earshot, you definitely would have heard that conversation. So there may have been a level of embarrassment on her end. And that's okay. You know, I don't feel bad about that. In fact, I do think that might even be useful. So next time she goes to kind of just speak cavalierly about things that can be incredibly offensive to somebody, it might cause her to pause and say, let me think about, you know, something from that person's perspective. My 5-year-old daughter is in kindergarten and they're learning about empathy. And I know empathy can be kind of a difficult concept to grasp for some, but if my 5-year-old can understand the concept, then this 70-year-old woman, even though she's older, and I know a lot of older people don't want to learn or change or, you know, adapt with the world, hopefully she learned a thing or two about empathy with this very brief interaction. So I didn't want this video to be super long. Hopefully, if you're still tuned in here, I do appreciate you for watching. I do appreciate you guys for being here. Every single subscriber, follower, you guys, I love you and I appreciate all of you. And if you're not subscribed and you enjoy, I won't say content like this because this is a little bit of a departure from the type of content that I typically create, but go ahead and just look through my playlists and my other content to see what kind of content that I create. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it, guys. If you want me to film a part 2 based off of some of the comments I received in the comment section, I can do that. If you want me to leave these types of conversations alone and just stick to the fashion and the sister logs and the other type of content that I typically create, I'm okay with that too. So thank you so much for tuning in and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.